This is Access All Areas, brought to you by OPSM. Damian Barrett with you, alongside me as always, four-time premiership coach, player of the century, Leigh Matthews. Leigh, welcome.
Thank you, Damian. Well, last weekend, Jack Reroll was the entree, but Buddy Franklin's third. We thought the big goal kickers had disappeared from the game. You were there too. It was one of the most memorable games of footy I've ever been
Yeah, I don't think anyone who was there will forget it, and we'll touch on that soon because you had some ideas about Buddy and it worked. Also joining us today on Access All Areas is Sydney Swans coach John Longmire, who's in town for a big game against Essendon tomorrow night. John, as we welcome you, as it stands the way the ladder is, you win this game tomorrow night, you'll be on top of the ladder tomorrow night at least.
That'd be nice. Yeah, it's it's only the halfway point of the year. It is a big game for us. I mean, Essendon's form has been outstanding this year, and we've been a little bit up and down over the last month. So it'd be good to string a couple of games together. And
the way 2012 is unfolding, some people have said it's similar to 2005. Now that's a great year for the Sydney Swans. Do you see it that way too? And I suppose when people make that observation, they're saying it's an even year, and if a team gets it right at the right time, it's a very winnable premiership for as many as 7-8 teams.
Oh, it's certainly very even. Yeah, I mean, there's I think there's a real emphasis on your form at the moment through a period of a month. If you get a good run of form, you've got to make sure you get those wins. And at any time of the year, you're going to suffer a little bit of a lapse, and you've got to try and make sure you still win during that form lapse. And if you're able to do that, I think that's a sign of a really good side.
Yep. Leigh, we'll move to tonight's game. It's crucial. Geelong v Carlton. Does the loser lose the chance for a top four spot?
Well, it's funny. I've always used to think, I don't know, when you set up a season, John, you get to the halfway point. I always think if 7+ you're going good, 6 wins, well, we're in contention, but 5 below, we're in real trouble. But there's been a lot of teams, in fact, that have been 5 wins or 6 losses that have still made top 4. But nevertheless, I think whoever loses tonight is stuck on 6 wins at the halfway point of the season. So top 4 seems a long way away. That's winning about 8 or 9 out of your last 11.
Yeah, especially if you look at last year, that the top 4, I think was the bottom. The 4th place team had won 16 games, so it is a big ask.
Yeah, Leigh, there's been big injuries to Carlton. We don't need to document them, but something's not quite right. Tell us what they need to do to be a chance tonight and for the remainder of the year while they're covering these injuries.
Well, I mean, we're talking about a few in the next few minutes. Players, where can you maximise a player's contribution to the team? So when you look at Carlton, clearly when their moving centre forward Waite's injured, Murphy, one of their really good midfielders, injured, you've got to think, how do we use the rest of our personnel? Bryce Gibbs probably comes under that category. I never look at him as a good floater. I mean, he sometimes plays in defence, but I reckon his most valuable player is when he's played on pretty much the opposition's best player. He's done it really well on Brendan Goddard. But they lost Carrazzo, who did that role really well for them. So you sometimes think he should be put onto Selwood or Bartel, one of the good opposition players, because I reckon that one-on-one role, and then he's a good offensive stopper.
Yeah. Leigh, last week you pleaded with Chris Scott to play Stevie Johnson closer to goal. You pleaded with Alistair Clarkson to leave Buddy Franklin closer to the goal. They did that, and you had 5 goals to Stevie Johnson, 13 goals to Buddy Franklin. Tell us why, from the outside, and why you argued so strongly it took a long time for these coaches to do what you told them to do, Leigh.
Oh, well, I don't know about that. But, I mean, I think the thing is, it's interesting, Joe. I always reckon if someone can kick goals, someone can create goals in the forward third, I think to myself, that's where you want to play them. I mean, Adam Goods is a wonderful player for you, and you've got to work out where do you get the best value out of him. And certainly last week, Johnson and Franklin played closer to goal and were dynamic.
It's a unique talent. The ability to be able to kick goals it can't be underestimated. And, it is, with Goodsy, we're probably in a similar boat that it depends upon the flow of the game. We put him forward, sometimes we start him forward, and if we think we need some momentum or we need to get Adam into the game, he'll go into the midfield and vice versa. So it does depend upon largely how the game's going, primarily the scoreboard.
Player who plays in a different position, but the similar sort of argument. Gary Ablett, 53 touches last week. A lot of analysis about the quality of those possessions and whether him getting as many possessions where he gets them is right for his team where it's at. John, can I ask you, you would have looked at it like every other senior footy person. What did you make of that game last week of Ablett?
Look, I think it's really hard to judge from the outside. Unless you're inside the footy club, you don't know what the planning was, you don't know what the tactics were going into the game, and I think it's obviously it's easy to say if he gets his touches forward of centre that's going to be a lot more damaging. But unless you're really on the inside, like the last one, the inside 50 kicks are important kicks. There's no doubt about that.
Where would you play him, Leigh? Would you persevere with what they're doing with him, or would you just get him out of that?
I wouldn't like him back third too much. I mean, there's a lot of cheap kicks that can be got in the back third because players push upfield. And one thing I wonder about a Gary at the Gold Coast, they haven't been doing much winning, so there's no satisfaction from the team performance. The trap is that getting massive ball in hands is the way he's rating his game.
Yep. Guys, the AFL Players Association yesterday presented to the AFL a raft of possibilities with representative football, and one of those was an all-star concept over a state of origin system. Just want to get your thoughts, Leigh. And look, the main thrust here, before you let loose on this content, I know you don't like it, but the main thrust was to have it in the pre-season, to reduce the NAB Cup by 1 week to 3 weeks, to then have the all-star game, a week's rest, then round one. Go for it.
I mean, the game has been so brutal, the players are saying, we can't play this much footy. It's killing us. State of origin, we've overlooked state of origin to go back to an exhibition game of All-Stars 2 weeks before.
Well, there's complications with state of origin. In the eyes of the players, there's US sport influences in why they like the All-Star concept. They're younger than we are, Leigh, and they like the US way of doing things.
Yeah, the first year. I tell you what, but the second, third, fourth year, there'll be a lot of injuries.
I was always of the understanding of the last couple of years that players are after 2 buys and more rest. The season's 22 weeks plus the pre-season plus finals. It's very taxing, and it's one of the most taxing games in the world. So to put another game in there, I know it's in pre-season, but it's still an important time of the year.
I put it on. It sounds good on paper. Leave it there.
You don't like it at all, Leigh. I think you just put the
as a player, I'd have no interest. As a coach, I would have certainly had no interest in my players playing.
The players
and as
do
a
have an
fan,
interest.
I've got no interest.
The players are saying they have an interest.
Well, yeah.
The
players want a lot of things, but again, what would they? I bet if you said to a player, what would you prefer, an all-star game or another bye?
Well, if it's in the pre-season, I'll ask John, if it was to get up and it's in the pre-season, how would you be as a coach to give up a certain amount of players to another coach for basically a week build-up to a game at that time of year?
Well, there's no way. I mean, personally, I'd be in favour of it because it's a critical time of the year. You're trying to get all of your players, especially your best players, in the right frame of mind and the right physical condition to start an AFL season.
So you wouldn't like that?
So I wouldn't like it.
Yeah.
No.
Guys, the Twitter's gone into meltdown over it. Everyone's got a view and they share your view there, Leigh. They share my view at times. But look, a lot of thoughts on the concept. Most of it has been positive. But Leigh, there has been a few negatives. We'll have a look at a positive one who at the start of it. Thomas, he says, imagine the most explosive and talented players all together. Cox taps to Judd, handballs to Ablett, kicks to Buddy, goal. Leigh, get amongst it. That would happen. It'd be exciting. Tweet from Chris here who says he wouldn't even bother watching an All-Star game. Why wouldn't they just play 3 games, including all traditional 6 states? And that's an issue there logistically. Tweet from Noel who says, don't pick anyone from the Pies. Enough injuries so far. Not worth the risk at any time. And I think that's where you come into it, John. And one more we'll take a look at. Cranky, who says he'd pick the first 5 players, but once they all pull out with injuries, we'll end up with the 3rd best team on the park, which I think both of you deep down think could happen as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is a risky concept in regards to, from a coach's point of view. Naturally, we're going to be saying that we want our players available for the year, and we'd hold our breath if that was the case, if they were playing for someone else.
Can I tell another thing? Can we let players play and let the administrators administer the game?
No, the players got a voice, Leigh. It's very powerful.
Yeah, they shouldn't have a voice in the fixturing. Well, I mean, they're there to play the game. Let the administrators administrate it and let the coaches coach.
One of the voices they have got is the possibility of putting the players against the wall, supposedly, and the captains of the All-Star teams picking them as we do in the schoolyard. Leigh, I want you to do this and get amongst it.
That's what children
get amongst it. These 2 players are on the wall. You're captain of these teams. Chris Judd versus Gary.
Yeah, this week I'd go with Ablett.
Why?
I think he's in a bit better form just recently than Juddy's been the last month or so.
We'll move on. Buddy Franklin against Travis
That's an easy one. Franklin's the first one you'd pick total of anybody.
We'll move on. We'll go to the 2 Collingwood players.
Well,
Scott Pendlebury
would be the first midfielder I would pick if I was picking a team. So it's definitely him.
Would you do it the same on that one, John? Come on.
You've got to be joking, Damian. I'd have them all.
Nick Nat and Dean Cox.
Cox. Yeah, Cox if he's your main ruckman, I think.
Cox, he's still the best ruckman in the competition, John?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll look at the back line here, potential. Matthew Scarlett against Darren Glass.
I still think Glass has probably been the best big stopping defender recently, even more than Scarlett.
More so than Scarlett, yeah. Leigh, Carlton North Melbourne, in the news this week for reasons they don't like, and the coaches copped it, the president's copped it in North Melbourne's case. The players have escaped it a bit.
Well, they do. And one of the things, I mean, the coaches, where the buck stops at the team performance, but I mean, in this modern era where there's leadership groups that are actually, what's the word? doing things around the footy club that were traditionally coaches' responsibilities. You think that maybe the leadership of the... Because one thing you know, when you get thrashed on that day, your leadership on-field fabric falls apart.
Yeah, I mean, if your best players are playing well, I mean, it stands to reason that you're going to be in for a good game. So you always rely upon that. But, you know, it does go with the territory a little bit as a coach. You know, I think a lot of the times you're out there to shield the players and you cop it and you don't enjoy it. But, you know, a lot of the times that does fall on the coach's shoulders.
As a rule, John, when the Swans lose, they don't get smashed. North Melbourne is getting smashed. It's a lot to do, as Leigh said, with the players and the leadership group. What is it about your club that differs to others with that strength of leadership group?
Oh, I'm not sure. I can't comment on other clubs, but I really respect the way our senior players and our leaders go about their business week in, week out.
Is it just a refusal to tolerate any form of mediocrity at any stage of a game, regardless of score?
Well, they drive their group pretty hard, and when we've had some bad losses even this year, it's probably been our senior players that haven't played so well and haven't done what they normally do. And you know, most of the time they're pretty good. I mean, it's 90% of the time I reckon our blokes are really solid and drive the group really well. But there are lapses. I mean, it's very hard to do to continue for that whole season and perform at that level all the time. But you really do rely upon your senior group to drive the on-field performance.
John, you're going to miss Ben McGlynn for this game. He was taken out of the equation by the match review panel on the back of an incident we'll just take a look at now. It seems quite inconclusive. Having said that, Patrick Vispremi does go to ground. Now, the match review panels basically had an AFL investigation. The video evidence is as we see it now. There's a medical report from the Western Bulldogs Footy Club, and as such, the incident was assessed as intentional conduct, and he's effectively got a week for a bad record. I know the club, your club, was not happy with that outcome. Are you able to say anything on this matter here?
Oh, I think the only thing I can say is that the two versions of events were quite different, but unfortunately we're missing Benny for this week, and he's an important player for us. I've spoken to Benny to make sure that he can only control what he can control, which is to make sure he doesn't put himself in that situation.
Are you dirty though that Patrick Vispremi certainly appears to have put McGlynn in here? Is that old code of conduct or player?
Well, it doesn't matter what I think. I mean, the reality is we're missing Benny McGlynn as an important player. So
yeah, you're missing Adam Goods, have been for some time with a quad injury. How far away is he?
We're hoping to get him back for the Geelong game, the Friday night game after the bye. So he's been running really well. He's symptom-free at the moment. We'll up his program again next week, and we'll continue to push that along. But we are very mindful that we don't want to take too many risks for him. You know, stating the obvious, he's a pretty critical player for us. So we will build him up towards that Geelong game, and hopefully that continues to go the way the preparation's been so far, which is really good.
Yep. The form of Jetta this year has been quite extraordinary, hasn't it, in the eyes of many. Leigh wanted to touch on this, just how he's improved pretty much every single week this year on the back of a good year last year.
Yeah, when we got him a couple of years ago, he understood his attributes, which were his pace. He really did a lot of work in the pre-season with his contested ball, and one of the things I think he benefited him enormously was doing a lot of training work with Kieran Jack and playing on Kieran Jack. He's almost our best, or he is, according to the GPS, our best two-way runner in the footy club. He runs an enormous amount of miles and at great pace, and he was tagging him during the pre-season, and I think it taught him a lot about how to run, where to run, and the effort you've got to sustain to be an AFL midfielder. And obviously his goal kicking's improved fairly dramatically, which helps as well. You
often think, you need your getters and you need your distributors, but you need your carriers.
Yeah.
And Jetta's getting a bit of the footy now, but he's actually can really burst with it with his speed. It's enormous strength.
Yeah, it is enormous strength. I mean, a couple of years ago at the draft, we got Gary Rowan and Lewis Jetta at pick 6 and 14, and that was a real important draft for us to get that extra speed into our group. And Lewis has been fantastic. I mean, the challenge for him is now to continue it on for the second half of the year. Your
club's record of taking players from other clubs who have been playing bit-part roles at those clubs and making them into stars at your club is profound. Have you got your eyes on some people now that you've got even access greater with free agency coming in this year?
Yeah, you always do. We always try to improve our playing list, and we're always trying to get better because we know everyone else is trying to get better. So we always do, but it doesn't mean you get every player that you look at either. So we look at other clubs' lists, so I'm sure other clubs look at our lists. But we have meetings about it, talk about it, but nothing really happens until the end of the year.
Yeah, Leigh, the swagger stagger thing which you've got going on, access all areas. I want you to tell us who your swagger team is.
Well, they're out of contention, but Port Adelaide are the one. They've won their last 3, and all of a sudden have been entrenched in the bottom 4, and really they can't beat the good teams. All of a sudden they beat Carlton, they've won their last 3, so all of a sudden they're fairly competitive. I mean, they play Hawthorn this week, and it's not, you think, well, they've got some chance, even against a team played as well as Hawthorn did last week. So they're really upper from what they were a month ago.
And they're swaggering. Who's staggering?
Well, I think Carlton, the team that got beaten by Port by 50 points last week, even with players out injured. I mean, I thought they were a premiership chance early in the year, but with injuries and where they are as they reach the halfway point, they were a long way from that.
Leigh, the result of our OPSM poll from Monday, the 2007 draft revisited, Matthew Cruiser or Trent Cotchin? Who would you take now? 27% said Cruiser, which left 73% saying Cotchin. John, do you agree with that?
Oh, we played Richmond a few weeks ago. Cotchin was outstanding. I mean, he's an absolute elite midfielder, similar to Gary Ablett. He just stays on his feet now, and he's such a beautiful kick. He's a top-line player.
On this program, he's been likened to James Hird and now Gary Ablett. So, yeah, he's on the rise.
Great talent. Yeah, great talent.
John, thanks for joining us on Access All Areas today. Good luck tomorrow night. And Leigh, as always, thank you. We'll see you next week as well. And with the Queen's Birthday Monday game, our next edition of Access All Areas will be on Tuesday. And it's out Luke Darcy in Matthew Richardson in the hosting chair. So enjoy the footy on the weekend. But for now, goodbye from us at Access All Areas.